Hello and welcome to Sammy C. Press. Today we're diving back into something more than Shakespeare, Poetry Workbook. Today we're going to have a bit of a scam alert. There are many untruths on the internet, including ones that misquote writers of all sorts. One such writer that is commonly misquoted is that of William Shakespeare. I had a person come to me and tell me how much they love Shakespeare. They proceeded to share two of the poems they found on the internet. In the person's defense, they had never read Shakespeare, and they did not realize that Shakespeare generally wrote in iambic pentameter. I am not sure the sources of these poems, but I do know they are not Shakespeare. One had the opening lines of, "Love me or hate me, both are in my favor," and the other one, "You say you love rain, but you open your umbrella." These are not William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was a masterful poet and writer. I only wish that as a young person he was presented to me in a way that I could understand and appreciate. I hope that the detective work, or scansion, we have done in this workbook along the way has trained you for this very moment. It will take a bit more brain power since speech today is much different. I often think of picking up a sonnet and writing it in today's vernacular. I might still try to do that. Have you ever wondered who inspired Shakespeare? I mean, the guy isn't the first to write, yet so much focus is on him. Don't get me wrong, it's for good reason. He was good at what he did. But in learning about literature, many times the history books, as well as the books in school, start with Shakespeare. He is not the creator of poetry. Did you know that the oldest recorded poem is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was written approximately 2100 BCE, going all the way back to Mesopotamia? Something to think about. Here are a few that I found that possibly inspired William Shakespeare. That of Geoffrey Chaucer. Now remember, I'm terrible pronouncing names. He was born in 1340 and died in 1400. He is still regarded as one of England's finest poets, even though he wrote so long ago. Have you ever heard the title The Canterbury Tales? Well, that was him. Another possible inspiree was Christopher Marlowe. Marlowe pioneered the use of blank verse. Blank verse is the form used in many of Shakespeare's plays. He was already famous at the time despite being only 2 months older than William himself. Sadly, Christopher died at the young age of 23 in a tavern fight. Let's not forget Giacomo de Latini. Here is the man who is thought to have invented the sonnet in Italy back in the 13th century. But it wasn't famous until after the 14th century when Francisco made it popular. Shakespeare read English poets inspired by Francisco Petrarch. Edmund Spenser, who was born either 1552 or 1553 and died in 1599 in London, England, who was often considered to be one of the greatest poets in the English language. He invented the Spenserian stanza. I am sure there are many more, but I will leave that rabbit hole for you to continue to go down. What we see is layer upon layer of humans inspiring humans, pulling from different cultures, nationalities, languages, and countries. A ripple effect that continues to pulse through the world today, molding and shaping what is now, what is to come, on into the future. We cannot pinpoint whether the chicken or the egg came first, but what we can see is how readers of the past, as well as writers of the past, were affected by others before them, as well as by what was true in their minds and in their worlds at the time. Take time to dig and find treasures that ring true for you and inspire you, adding to the ever-spreading, ever-growing ripple effect by adding your own layer to the never-ending depths of human inspiration. I wanted to include this page from the workbook. We are almost at the end of the book. I just wanted to interrupt briefly before we go into the blah 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 section. I hope the book has not been blah 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 or even blah blah, and hopefully not even blah for you. I know it would have been more interesting if only my part for the time machine would have arrived on time from Amazon. but at last it did not. So I was forced to do things the old-fashioned way. But hopefully, I new-fashioned an old-fashioned thing so that it was enjoyable and educational. I know what you're thinking, but educational things can be enjoyable too. I hope you had a few laughs along the way. From this journey that we've taken together, we can see the ripple effect that poets of the past had on poets in the future. The same is true today. As we have traveled through time, we have peeled back the layers, as it were, to see how humans have inspired one another. My hope is that you were inspired, maybe by the writers in this book. You might even now realize that you do, in fact, like poetry. Or you yourself have decided to pick up a pen, pencil, stylus, or even a quill pen to write, forever changing the course of literature as we now know it today. No, I am not being overly dramatic. Were you not paying attention? It happened in the past, and it is still happening at this very moment. If you are still not feeling inspired despite my best efforts, remember, this is not an exhaustive list of poets. There are so many more out there to find and explore. Ones from different time periods, different races, cultures, locations, and nationalities. There are many that I have not been able to include due to copyright. Did you know there are still 31 more poets included in the workbook that I did not discuss in the videos? Along with tools like Types of Poetry Glossary, a glossary of poetic terminology, the lowdown on rhyme, defining meter, defining patterns of lines, and a quick reference key. It is a nice tool to have on hand. A big takeaway is that a lot of these poets wrote for themselves. Yes, some became famous during their lifetime, and many after their death. But their motivation was writing not for others, but for themselves. Writing not to fit some structure, instead learning to write in their own unique style. You have a voice, and you have a story, both of which are important. All humans have a choice in the way they choose to act, in the way they inspire. Inspire others to do good, to think of others, maybe even do a little raking. In case you're not familiar with that term, it stands for Random Acts of Kindness. We want to inspire others to be better. As we can see from the years we span through this book, we have the ability to make a lasting impact. We want to choose wisely. We hope you have enjoyed this discussion of something more than Shakespeare Poetry Workbook, and we hope this is just the beginning, opening the door to your love of poetry. Until next time,